Tim Hudak is a name familiar to anyone who pays any attention to public service in Ontario. A political career spanning more than 2 decades and a member of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario, during which time he served as the province's critic for municipal affairs and housing and public infrastructure renewal. He's held numerous cabinet posts, culminating with his role as the leader of the Ontario Conservative Party. As Minister of Consumer and Business Services, Tim played a key role in assisting the Ontario real estate industry in establishing the Real Estate Business Brokers Act and in the creation of the Real Estate Council of Ontario, the body charged with regulating the real estate industry and protecting the interests of the public on behalf of the provincial government. Tim retired from politics in 2016, although he is still very much in the public's eyes and ears with his new role as Chief Executive Officer of the Ontario Real Estate Association and as host of his own weekly talk radio show on News Talk 1010.
Welcome to Hitting Home. Tim, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Arif, Mike, good seeing you guys again. Thanks for being back on Hitting Home. It's been a while.
Absolutely.
I'm glad to have you back.
Thank you very much. Fantastic to see you here. Listen, it's been a year for you. It's been a year for you at OREA. And congratulations, obviously.
You.
But it's been one heck of a year.
It's flown by. I mean, it will be December 1st. It'll be my 1-year anniversary as CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association. And it was late September where I made my last speech in the legislature, walked out that door after 21 years. It's flown by, but it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. So you've been part of just an unprecedented whirlwind of market activity, highs, lows, changes at the federal level, changes at the provincial level. We hope to talk about all those things, obviously. But as well, I mean, I know Mike and I were talking, and we actually wanted to say, you know, natural transition from you. What's been the biggest thing for you coming out of politics and into still in the public eye and still as in public service, but in a different capacity?
Yeah, so I'll try to, it's a big question, it's a good question. I've been thinking about it a lot, obviously, because the 1-year anniversary is coming up. Yeah. But here's the nutshell. Really, when you're running an industry association, professional association of realtors, a lot of the muscles used in politics you use in this job. So you got to know your policy, you got to be a good communicator, working with the media, bringing like-minded people together, having allies, advocating, right? Mm-hmm. So that is the same sort of muscles you exercise. The difference is when you're in politics, you got to have a level of knowledge about 50 different topics. Any day, something can blow up. You might be asked about from healthcare to education to booze to marijuana to who knows what. In this, you become an expert in a narrow area. Sure. So that's the big difference, exactly. And it's a very exciting one, because what's my job all about? Well, it's helping the people who help people get their dream home.
Mm. And you don't have as many eyes all at one time.
But I'm on Hitting Home. I'm on Hitting Home, all the viewers.
Yeah, well, that's true.
But I mean, you're right. I mean, we said off air, the real estate, always a topic of conversation among Canadians. Yes. And then this past year, I mean, it's probably been the #1 topic at the barbecue or the cocktail party or whatever.
And that's
so
really
interesting time to be involved.
That's what we wanted to do. We wanted to have a show that would be about what people are talking about at the kitchen table. So let me ask you right off the bat real quick. You started as a fresh face at the association, and you walked in, I presume, with 4 pillars, 5 talking points that you wanted to accomplish in your first year. What would it be?
That's the politics, eh?
Yeah.
Well, I would say there are 3 main marching orders that the board gave me, the Ontario Real Estate Association board, when they hired me. Generally you might look for an association manager, another association comes over, moves somebody up, but they wanted something different. So number 1, they wanted somebody who was going to raise the profile of the professional association to talk more on behalf of realtors and the people they work hard for
and the
every
industry
day.
as a whole.
You got it. To be out there, talk about the value of home ownership, to make sure that millennial that just graduated from Georgian College, got a good job, can get a place to call home and get a mom and dad's place, right? So that was number 1 on the list. Number 2, we have 39 boards in the province, and local boards, including the Barrie board, of course, a very strong local board. Mike Douglas, former president, is on our main board now.
Yes, he is.
So to make sure we've got a good relationship with them, because we're all on the same team, fighting for the same cause of home ownership and helping more people become homeowners. And third and finally, we had been doing the same thing for a long number of years. So take a look at all the things that we do and try to figure out what we're good at and double down on that. And things are not so good, well, maybe back away. And it's been a very good mandate to have.
Yeah, because the industry was changing and we were kind of on the same level for a long time. It's an interesting year, seeing how the government is creeping in, trying to mold and shape this industry and housing in general in the country. And I know it's a pet peeve of yours. I follow some of your feeds on Twitter and so forth, and it's certainly a concern for our industry in the outlook for the consumer, the buyer and the seller. Give us a little bit of your thoughts on
you're right,
what's
Mike. I mean,
happening and
it's been
what do you think we should be doing?
a big concern of mine as CEO and realtors and our board, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Look, when the market was heating up here in Barrie and in the Greater Toronto area, no surprise the government will try some policies to cool it off. They don't want it to get spinning out of control. But honest to God, it's been like a huge pile-on. You've got the province that brought forward what they call the fair housing plans and new taxes and such. You had some municipalities like Toronto piling on with a land transfer tax increase. Thank God you don't have that in Barrie, thanks to fight by realtors to stop it a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And then the federal government has hiked mortgages several times. They
Stress
brought
tests.
in tougher rules to get a mortgage. And the latest one that just came out about having making it much more difficult for careful savers, like people who have paid
more than
mortgages, can
25%
put down more than 20%, right? Like, why are they being punished? So my message to government, and those that are watching back home, pump the brakes, ease off, let the market play out, don't stamp it into the ground.
So I've got a different perspective representing the mortgage brokers in Ontario or working with the mortgage brokers in Ontario. And the number one thing I've heard is the government has created a solution to a problem that doesn't yet exist. And they're continually trying to compare us to pre-2008 US markets, which Canada is not designed to be like. I mean, or it's purposely designed not to be like.
But is it a solution? Because it's in the interest of curbing escalating home prices, but you create a scenario that discourages developers from stepping in. So we're not getting new homes built as fast as we have. And if it's a supply and demand industry, and if the supply is not there, the prices are just going to escalate more.
Let me throw this at you all piled on at once.
Yeah.
Barrie and Simcoe County area, third highest in all of Canada for rents. 2% rental vacancy, if that. The new stress test from the finance minister, amongst other things on his current calendar. And then you've got the province obviously making it tougher for landlords or developers to want to build rental supply by saying straight across the board there's going to be rent control. So you've now got landlords who won't build rental supply. So they're not going to help the market. They're not going to help the supply and make it more affordable, in my opinion. And then you've got people who would naturally have been transitioning over to home ownership who can't get out of mom's house, mom and dad's house, because
or out of a rental scenario.
Or out of a rental scenario because they can't afford to. They can't qualify. They're getting hit from both sides.
Yeah.
What is your organization saying? What's your industry saying?
The biggest issue we need to solve is supply. We need more housing in the marketplace and more choices. Whether you want to live in a high rise, you want to live in a mid rise, you want to have a detached home, across the board we need options. And for some of us, sometimes governments seem to think that there are two species of human beings. There's homeowners and there's renters, and you never interbreed, right? The reality is that most of us in our lives are in both camps.
Yes.
We often started as renters, become homeowners, and then maybe later in life you become a renter again. So we need both rental supply and home ownership, and the worst thing to do is to put caps on rental supply that will say to landlords, don't bother investing. It's not good for tenants, it's not good for supply.
So this is artificial too. This isn't market driven. This is artificial.
Yeah.
So when we come back, let's pick up where we are. There's so much to talk about. I don't know that half an hour is going to cut it. You're probably going to have to come back.
I'd love to come back.
All right, well, when we come back, we'll pick it up. Thanks. Welcome back to Hitting Home. We're here with Tim Hudak, who's the CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association. Thanks for joining us. We are talking about everything. We're talking about rental supply. We're talking about supply in the market. We're talking about government intervention and influence. Take it away. Pick it up.
I mean, the bottom line, you guys are probably similar. When I became 32, that's when I bought my first home. And most of my buddies that I grew up with in Niagara, probably late 20s to early 30s. You invest in your home, and it changed me as a man. Like, I actually got more involved in my community. I cared more about what my home looked like than I did before. I cared about my neighbors.
You have a sense of responsibility.
Exactly. So there's a value that comes from that, right? And we change as people. What I worry about is for the 28 and 30-year-olds in Barrie that are watching today, you know,
Where's their
they're
opportunity?
kind of screwed when it comes to buying a home that they can afford. So we got to do something about it, or rentals. And when Barrie has such high rental rates and such low vacancy, that tells me that the government's policy to impose rent controls, it may sound good in the short term, but what it means is that a lot of mom and pop renters are not going to get in the business because they're not going to have a return, so they'll invest elsewhere. It'll mean existing landlords are not going to invest back in their properties to make them nicer. And honest to God, I lived through some pretty crappy rental places in the 1980s because of bad rent control of the 70s. We don't want to repeat that.
So let's dispel something, because to some, and I won't say this is en masse, but there is a rumor out there that all landlords are rich and greedy and miserly and slumlords. And the truth of the matter is that there is a demographic or a group of people, because not all rental inventory is the high-rise multi-unit. So there's a group of people out there who, instead of having an RRSP or a TFSA for their retirement, have a few dollars that they put away into a rental house.
Yeah, it's a pretty common sort of middle-class investment, where maybe you have a condo, you have a smaller house that you rent out, or maybe the house you used to own and you rent it back to somebody. I mean, my grandparents did that as immigrants. They rented out the upstairs. And my wife's parents, they live in Listowel, not too far from Barrie, but they're small mom and pop landlords. They've got about 8 places. And you know what they care about? They treat their tenants well. They want their tenants to stay there. And they get a decent return so they can put money back into keeping the place spruced up.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of how many of those mom and pop landlords are able to keep pace with, or are they subsidizing any shortfalls, taxes, insurance, whatever it might be? Like, how many are actually netting a real profit on a month-to-month cash flow basis, as opposed to only on the appreciation down the road?
Yeah, well, I think they're getting squeezed, right? Those that are under rent control today get a very, I think it's been like 1 or 2% return.
Yeah.
And if the hydro bills aren't included, right, they've been going through the roof until recently.
Pet peeve of yours, maybe?
I talked about that once in a while. I used to be on a different capacity. And, you know, also the Landlord-Tenant Act is, there's got to be a balance, right? You have to have a fair to landlords and fair to tenants, so you're somewhere in the middle. But I think increasingly over time, it's swung out of balance.
And it
so
discourages landlords.
exactly say, I can't keep up with this red tape, this runaround. Professional tenants who rip you off and don't pay for a year. Like the big corporations, maybe they hire a lawyer and they can handle that. Small mom and pops, they're up against
So
it.
it keeps people, individuals, from wanting to get into providing rental stock, and it discourages people who that may even be their only way to buy into a house, is buy a house with a second suite, rent that second suite. But even with that, they're saying, well, I don't know if I want to get into this
And that's not
landlord
helpful
scenario.
for that 22-year-old who just graduated from Western, came back to Barrie so she could get a good job, and live here. It's going to be harder to find a place.
Yeah.
So,
So
you've gone from leader of the opposition to lobbyist. How receptive are the people you're talking to?
So I'll let you in the secret. Don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Right? We can trust the audience out there and hitting on most of them. So politics is a lot like pro wrestling. You put on a show for the cameras, you can have a big fight and that kind of stuff, and you can go have a beer afterwards. That was my theory, and it's actually turned out to be true. So even though I was leader of the Conservative Party, I will give credit. Premier Wynne spent a lot of time with me and my colleagues, other ministers, Patrick Brown, the PC leader, and Andrew Horvath, the NDP.
When you're not breaking the folding chairs over each other.
Exactly, jumping off the top rope, and we all go for a beer after.
Do you miss that Gladiator Arena at any given day? Or
yeah, I mean, to finish on
you
the thought.
wake up cold sweat, wondering where you're going. Oh, okay, I don't have to go there anymore.
So, yeah, we'll come back to that because it's fun. But the reality is, like, all of them are interested in this Canadian dream of home ownership. They want to make sure it's affordable, and new Canadians moving here, that they can get a place just like my grandparents did, right? Like, they all want that, and so we've had a very good reception on increasing supply. Now it's time to act. And do I miss the politics? I did 21 years of it, right? Like, so sometimes you miss the adrenaline rush and the fight and stuff like that, but it's to work now in a business that is all about helping people get a place to call home. That's tremendously motivating.
And in addition to your credentials, when OREA looked to you to lead us as the new Chief Executive Officer, they knew that, you know, you having the inside in politics could only be a benefit. You know how to communicate with these people, and so I would ask you, what is it that we can do as an industry to lobby the government? How strongly should we be lobbying, and what direction?
Yeah.
Are you either taking us now, or do you think we should be going in the future?
Yeah, I mean, clearly God gave me one gift in life. It's not looks. He gave me the ability to run my mouth, so it helps to be in the government business. But knowing your way around the place does help, right? How bills work, who you need to talk to, how you need to maybe make a compromise so something gets done that people like. But for realtors, here's secret number 2 for the show. Politicians are actually people too, believe it or not.
They go home to their communities. They have neighbors to answer to.
They do, and develop a relationship, Mike, with them that they know you're out there in the community. Like, I would defy anybody to name me a profession that's more involved in their community than Ontario Realtors. Whether they're coaching the baseball or the hockey team, gymnastics, Rotary Club, school council, whatever, right? So as an MPP, I saw somebody like you, Arif like you, small business person, involved in the community, you're giving back. I know you, I like you, I trust you. And therefore, I may not be a realtor, but if I want to know something, you're my go-to guy.
Yeah.
And if you tell me something that this law is going to mean X, Y, or Z, I'm more likely to believe somebody I see active in the community than a fancy consultant wearing a $5,000 suit or a bureaucrat I've never met.
Yeah.
So true. So true, and that's the thing. I mean, and it's tough, by the way, if you're down in Toronto or if you're in Ottawa, to keep your roots in the local community.
To survive in politics, you have to, right?
Yeah.
Because there's always tides. And if you want to survive the tide, you need to develop a reputation, somebody's in tune with your community, that you're fighting for it, you're taking up issues, and you're only going to be as good as the word on the street from people you know. So to realtors that are watching, or other professions, or mortgage brokers, or what have you, develop that relationship, a trusting, honest relationship. Give them the straight goods, and also be there for them. Attend the community events, help out, volunteer, because that trusting relationship is really vital to my former business of knowing what's happening on the ground.
And it's as valuable, that relationship, as it's ever been. I know people say we have technology, we can search on our own and that, but when it comes down to the fundamentals of processing a real estate deal, it's still good to have a professional having your back.
So let's talk about that, though. You've got, in your industry, you've got certainly a trend of teams, team building, utilizing technology, utilizing all the visuals. I don't want to say fancy websites, that's not fair. Virtual tours, websites, technology in general, and a team approach versus more the single realtor representing you. Talk about that for a minute.
Huge changes. So here's an interesting connection. In 2002, I was actually the cabinet minister for what was called Consumer and Business Services. So I was actually the minister that brought through what's called REBA, the Real Estate Business Brokers Act. So that's kind of like the foundational, the rules that realtors have to follow. So now 15 years later, I get a chance to play a role in modernizing that. And look, you could have bought a mansion in Barrie in 2002 and you get a shack today, right?
Absolutely.
Similarly, real estate rules need to change. Twitter, Facebook, social media barely existed. So we have a plan, it's called REBAReform.ca, again, REBAReform.ca, to say how do we get the real estate rules into 2017 and raise standards and professionalism.
So when we come back, you'll tell us more about that.
Look forward to it.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Welcome back. We're here with Tim Hudak. I want to talk more about the imbalance we have between supply and demand for housing within Ontario. And I kind of touched on what our role as an industry is, but in the broader scope, what should be happening here to correct that imbalance?
So let me start with demand. So on the demand side, you've got a generation of millennials who are now in the career zone, they're having kids, so they're in the housing market.
Yeah.
You got the bank of mom and dad, right? The boomer generation, which is the wealthiest because they've worked hard and saved. They want to give money to the kids.
And they have equity in their homes right now to
You
give
got it. They want to see their
Yeah.
kids get the same, so they're helping out. You've got about 100,000 immigrants per year coming into the Toronto area, the Greater Golden Horseshoe, including Barrie, about 200,000. They see this as a great place to live and work, the Canadian dream. And because the economy here, while not going gangbusters, is stronger than the rest of Canada, a lot of Canadians coming here. And mortgage rates, even though they've gone up a bit, are still relatively low in our lifetimes and low for our parents.
And you look at it over a 30-year perspective, so
You got it.
we're still doing quite well
Yeah,
right
so all that's driving up demand. And those are good problems to have, like a lot better than the opposite. Problem is, we got all these people coming in, but you got a lot more people chasing fewer and fewer houses. That drives up prices. A number of sales in Barrie, while the prices have gone up, sales are down because of lack of inventory. And I will give credit to Mayor Lehman and Council. I mean, they have added more land in southern Barrie, but the province has to do a better job. One area, every budget The province has money for infrastructure, water, sewer, roads, rail. Why not target that money to communities that have housing-ready land available so that millennial couple can find a place in Barrie or wherever, and the province backs it up with water, sewer, roads, and rail.
One area I've mentioned too, and last time we talked was a lot of municipal brownfield. Expensive to develop brownfield, but it's land that the government could get behind and encourage, offset the costs of converting that and into inner city housing.
That sometimes stalls a development entirely, right?
For sure. Yep.
Yeah, there's one solution I see right there.
Brownfields would be outstanding like that. Overall, the regulatory burden and the costs are abhorrent, and we have some of the slowest moving regulatory processes because everybody's involved in the gang, right? It's the city, the county, the Conservation Authority, M&R, MOE, the province, and before you know it, well, Reagan had that little expression, right? If something's moving, you tax it. If it's still moving, you regulate it, and then when you kill it, you subsidize it. We're getting near that last category.
Absolutely. You were saying that you've been tasked with sort of modernizing and bringing the Real Estate Association into the current generation, if you will. What are some things in line with that used to work as a realtor that really don't apply anymore today? Or what is advice that mom would be giving son and daughter today that worked for them that just truly doesn't apply today?
Well, you mentioned teams, right? Realtors more so are working in teams for full service as opposed to being one-person shops. That's an evolution that's good for consumers, right? They like the full service, but the rules are made for the one-person shop with a broker over top. So what should the rules be around teams? Is a broker responsible for the secretary, or is it the realtor who runs the team?
Right.
There's some confusion on that.
So clear that up. In social media, never existed. A lot of advertisement for realtors, Facebook and Instagram. So what should the rules be? They actually have one that says, you know, Rico says you have your phone number, I think, and your business name on every page. It doesn't work that way anymore. How do you do that with 140 characters, right?
Right, exactly.
The other area, I think, is to raise standards when it comes to education. That's still stuck back in 2002 or so.
Yes, for
It
sure.
has become more expensive, far more complex. Realtors have greater level of expertise and detail. So let's raise the standards for those that are going through real estate college.
I think the bar should be higher.
Well, there's 900 realtors approximately in Barrie area?
No, there's closer to 1,000 now.
Okay,
and
so closer to
77,000 in all of Ontario, I believe.
But how many of them are full-time and how many of them are just doing their family members' transaction?
Yeah, I don't even know if we have great information on that, right? But it is such an important profession because the big investment you make
it's biggest
every year, like look at the mortgage rules we talked about in the first segment. Every week or so, there's some new rule you got to keep track of. Nobody's going to know what's happening on the ground like your neighborhood realtor. What's the development going in? How good is the school? Is there a biker gang down the street? Is it a smart investment where price is going? So that kind of expertise is invaluable, and it's such an emotional purchase where you raise your family, for goodness sakes. So shouldn't we have the highest standards in North America when it comes to education, professionalism, and a demanding continuing education?
What about I was just going to say, on that thought, what about the family that says, I'm backing onto environmentally protected area green space, and then in 5 years from now it's being developed? What about that responsibility of communicating the potential that it could be developed?
Absolutely. Right?
And the liabilities are there, for sure.
And certainly in Barrie and Simcoe County, there's going to be a lot of pressure because it's a great place to live.
Now our industry, I'm all for having the highest standards in education we can have, and we're making big changes right now. We're privatizing our education structure within OREA. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and what the benefit to the consumer is going to be of that?
Yeah, and look, I was going to say too that I think the Barrie Real Estate Board has done a really good job of promoting these issues that we talked about. They recently did what was called a housing hack, where they got together with academics, people in the social services community. The mayor was there. It was really exciting to say, what are some good ideas to make sure that we have enough housing here that people can afford and stay in Barrie? So good for them. Real estate side education, so we have been running the Real Estate College at the association for a long time. That contract comes to an end December 31st of 2020. It'll be a different provider, Humber College, and a company called NIIT. So our role now, make sure we continue to raise the standards, make sure the tests are up to the importance of the profession, and continuing education. Right now, you just kind of do this video and you click a button. We could do a lot better than that.
I think we can, yes, for sure.
We are in our last minute. So clearly we need to have you back because there's probably 1,000 more questions we can ask. And we're going to ask our viewing audience if they've got questions that they want, they can email into us, and we'd love to have you back to answer.
Sure.
Final thoughts?
Well, and unlike politics, I actually answered your questions or close to it. Maybe
Is that uncomfortable? No. Congratulations. Fantastic.
There you go. Yeah, look, it's great to be back on Hitting Home. I appreciate what you guys are doing to raise an issue because I think it is the thing that people think about all the time, right? Such an important investment. It's where you have your fondest memories. And I just want to say that we need to make sure we focus on the ball. There'll be lots of distractions on the way. There'll be the short-term ups and downs. Long-term, we need to have more supply in the marketplace, greater choice in the marketplace, and make sure the role of the realtor, the most crucial profession in that exchange, plays a prominent role.
And do you see that? Do you see that role evolving? Do you see that role continuing to sort of transcend into the development community and that kind of thing?
Yeah, we've done a lot of partnerships. So we've partnered with the development community, with municipalities, with universities to do research to make sure decision makers at Queen's Park, because a lot of this really rests with the provincial government. They set the rules for municipalities to make sure we're focused on passing that dream of home ownership on to the next generation.
Excellent.
Do you want to round us out with some information to our viewers for sending questions in?
Well, I would encourage viewers, if you have any questions, to send them to, and I'm doing this from memory, our email is email hittinghome at gmail.com.
Oh, I like that. Email
hittinghome at gmail.com.
That's easy enough. Just like that. Rolls off your tongue, doesn't it?
Excellent.
Tim, thank you, sir, so much.
My
Thanks
pleasure.
for taking the time to come in.
Thanks for the work that you're doing here in the community.
We'll see you next week.
Visit HittingHome.ca and watch One More Thing, the 5-minute after the show chat with our guests, where you will find out some pretty interesting things we just don't talk about on the show. HittingHome.ca also gives you access to all our past shows to watch online at your own pace. HittingHome.ca. Give it a click.